welcome to the City Debate Show, and joining me around the table today, one of the most popular men ever to wear the sky blue, Peter Barnes, and the esteemed Paul Hetherington from the Star Sunday, who's not been with us around the table for a while, Paul.
No, it's good to be back, Jim. Delighted to be with you.
I don't sure you believe that, Barnes, did you? Anyway, come on, we've never scored more than one goal against Arsenal in the Premier League, and there we go, 3-0, stuffed them.
Well,
Thoughts?
I think anything can happen, Jim, these days, and I never fancied Arsenal before the game because they're going through a sticky patch at the moment, and without the captain, all the paperwork that's come out, the media attention to the captain of Arsenal, and, you know, Wenger having an argument with him, and Fabregas being, they've got 5 or 6 injuries at the moment, haven't they, Arsenal?
Right.
So I've not fancied Arsenal for 12 months, Jim. I think ever since they've let Perez go, Vieira and Bergkamp, and now Henry the last 12 months, you know, they're not the same team. It's right having all these young lads, but I think City are up for it. I think City at home, you know, they've had a couple of bad results just lately. This was going to be a big game to get back on the winning track, and they did it.
So, Paul, did we beat Arsenal light then?
Well, as we were discussing earlier, Jim, you can only play the team who are facing you on the pitch. And, OK, I think altogether Arsenal had 9 players missing for various reasons. There was one suspension, there was a discipline issue with Gallas, the rest were injuries, affecting fairly senior first-team squad players. But that doesn't alter the fact that the team they put out on the pitch still had plenty of ability there. We've seen how good the kids are at Arsenal in the Carling Cup. So, you know, OK, it was a good opportunity for City to beat a team as strong as Arsenal, there's no doubt about that. But you can't take anything away from City because they did the job.
Right, now, Peter, let me bounce off you a couple of things that fans have been talking about all weekend. Of course, they're skipping about beating Arsenal 3-0, but one thing that is still causing quite a kerfuffle is this idea that we're going to play a little Shawnee inside to accommodate Darius Vassell on the wide. What did you make of that?
I think they want Shawnee. Obviously, Shawnee Wright's a great player. They want him to have more of the ball. So I think just bringing him inside, it happened to me sometimes. I was never an inside forward, Jim. I think when you're out on the wing, you need the ball. And if he's not getting the ball, Sean, at times he can be wasted. And I think they're bringing him in more to get down the middle because he can go either side, he can beat people either side. And he links up very well, I think, with Robinho. Ideally, I'd like to see him play right wing, where he gets at people and he puts crosses in. But at the moment, because we've got a few injuries as well, I think they like to get him involved more in the middle, where he can have a run at people down the middle.
So is it more about getting Sean Wright-Phillips on the ball more than accommodating Darius Vassell, Paul?
That's a good question, actually. Perhaps it is, but, I mean, Peter knows more about wing play than I do, and he probably
knows more than anybody, doesn't he?
Probably knows more than most. And I would agree with Peter. Ideally, I'd like to see Sean Wright-Phillips playing wide right, and I think he probably will end up playing wide right. I think once the City team is established and clearly the arrivals haven't ended, there will be changes to the team, and I can see him eventually playing wide right. But having said that, I thought he was the best player on the field on Saturday, so who's complaining? One thing that, again, we could take a lot of encouragement from, Peter, after a few dodgy weeks, the defence suddenly looked right back on blob again.
They did, and they needed to tighten up strictly the last few weeks because they haven't been playing well at the back. It was a surprise to me when Mackay Richards played left-back. You know, he's a big, strong lad. He's got to concentrate on what he's good at, which is defending. And I always like to see him at the back, you know, centre-half, or even right-back behind little Sean Wright-Phillips, because he's got the power and strength to get forward. But I think at left-back he's not. He's out of sorts at left-back. But they were a lot better at weekend, Jim, definitely.
I don't know if it was just me, Paul, but it did strike me that once City actually got the noses in front, where in the past you tended to see Zabaleta and Garrido whizzing that way, did take a slightly more measured approach on Saturday. They actually played as full-backs once we got our noses in front.
I think that's what you want full-backs to do, first and foremost, really,
I do, Paul, but I'm old.
I know the modern thinking is you often sign and pick full-backs because they can bomb forward, they can play like wingers, they can get round the back of defences and get in crosses. And that is part of the game, and it is important. But you know, I'm old-fashioned. I like centre-halves who come and head the ball and win it in the air. I like defenders who can tackle. And I think that is very much still, you know, the first job for a defender.
You're right. I think it's a specialised position, Jim. I think in the 80s they brought this word in wing-back. It was a defender who supposed to be able to defend and get back, but also get forward and cross balls. But there ain't many that real classy left-backs or right-backs who can get to the byline and pull it back. You know, let's have full-backs defending first, and then if they can go forward. It was a bonus in my day.
It was a bonus,
If Pardon, Willie Donachie Whoever played right back, Tony Buck, was a great full-back going forward supporting Mike Summerby. It's a bonus if your full-backs can get forward and support the wide men, but they're there to defend first and foremost.
Well said, Peter Barnes. We agree with that. Right, listen, we're just past the third way through the season, Paul. So is it fair now to start making at least an initial assessment of Rubinho? Because when he came, there was all those little catty comments about, does he know which club he's coming from? Does he think it's Chelsea? He just can't spell it. That type of thing. How would you assess his performances in the cause of City so far?
Well, very much in credit. He's got 9 goals now, hasn't he, in all competitions, which is excellent. I think he was going to be sort of assessed and analysed, Jim, from day one because of who he is, because of the amount of money involved, British record, transfer fee. So he was always going to be under the spotlight. But I think he's a guy who's really happy in the spotlight, really comfortable in it. He's got tremendous faith and confidence in his own ability, and rightly so. And the crowd love him. You expect that. And, you know, I think Rubinho being at City is just a massive plus for the club.
I have to say, Peter, if he's not enjoying himself, he's a belting actor, isn't he?
Yeah, he's not a diver, though, is he?
No, he's but like he really looks as though he's relishing the game out there.
He is, and what I like him, he's not a big man. You look at his presence on the field, he's not a big lad. But he goes anywhere on the park. He wants the ball. He goes looking for it to the right wing, goes over to the left. He wants the ball to feet, and when he gets the ball to feet, he sees things so quickly. He sometimes just lays the one off first touch, or he gets it to his feet and he takes people on. He's aware of players around him, as all great players are. He knows who's around him when he gets the ball.
That goal he scored against Almunia, who's 6'3", so when he throws his arms up, notionally he should be thick end of 8 foot. Didn't get anywhere near it.
No.
That was a heck of a finish, that ball, wasn't it?
Sublime was the way I described it.
That was your adjective
That was my adjective.
Yeah.
I could probably have used a few others, to be honest. It was just a brilliant finish from a brilliant player, very talented player. In those situations, you know, when a player's breaking clear one-on-one with a keeper, you fancy a top Brazilian to score in that situation, don't you?
And sorry for interrupting. With all the goals he scores for City, he doesn't miss the target in front of goal. You know, all the goals he scored in the box, he knows where the goal is. He doesn't miss the target ever. Yeah. You know, and he's a great finisher. And
a great pass as well, wasn't it, by Sean Rice?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
To create the chance.
He had to time the pass perfectly. He had to let Benjani get back as well as put Rubinho in. But do you know that goal reminded me of, just a touch? I'll take you back. Ooh, when you were in your pomp. Remember, Pat Jennings came out and you lifted one over him. That was sublime. You are older. Do you remember that finish?
I'm old enough, I can remember further back than that if you want to.
Right, now listen, I know that you went to the match with your dad on Saturday, and your dad is widely recognised as being the best judge of a talent just about anywhere, yeah? So what's he made of Rubinho?
I think he's so gifted, and it excites him when he gets the ball. You know, you can see when he's looking through the box. And
has he got enough guile for your dad?
Oh, I think so. Jim, he's been very impressed with him, and he says he's got everything, you know, and scored so many goals he scored so far this season, you know. It's a great start for him. Fans' favourite.
Understandably, Mark Hughes was fulsome in his praise of Rubinho after the game. You're bound to be after a goal like that. But he always comes back to his other shining diamond, Stephen Ireland. There was talk at the start of the season he was going to be offloaded. I don't think that's an unfair word to use. Offloaded, possibly to Sunderland. I think he's proved his doubters back in spades. Don't you think, Paul?
Well, absolutely. To be honest, I was always surprised that there was even the possibility that City might let him go, because he's clearly a very talented player who's going to get better. I could understand Roy Keane wanting him. I mean, Roy Keane knows all about every Irish player going. He probably knows a lot about most players, but he's really hot on the Irish lads, and I know he would have been delighted to take Stephen Ireland up to Sunderland. So it's worked out perfectly for City that, you know, that fell through. He's still here, he's playing well. Superman, as he's known these days, and he's playing a bit like him at the moment.
What intrigued me, though, Peter, in the past we've seen little cameos, but they've tended to be cameos, little flashes of real quality, but not a major influence on the game. He was in every camera shot that you saw of the game on the highlights. Yeah. When the goals were going in, he was always the spare man available if in case he wanted to roll it across.
Yeah, I think he's coming into his own now, Jim. He's a more confident player. I think he scores goals. He's a box-to-box player. Out of all the young kids who have come through the last 2 or 3 years, to me, he's the best. You could have Mackay Richards, you could have Michael Johnson. Unfortunately, Michael, he's a little bit injury-prone at the moment, having a bad time with injuries, but Stephen Ireland, he's up and down the field, and he loves to score goals and link up with the forwards, and, you know, talk about Colin Bell. This lad's got everything.
Well, Gary Owen was sat in your chair last week, and he said he's been fantastic, but if you want to judge him, let's see if he's capable of sustaining it for a full season. Is that about right?
Yeah, it is about right. I think you've got to judge him over 2 or 3 seasons, season in, season out, so players get to find out the weak points, but I don't think he's got any weak points, Stephen Ireland. He loves scoring goals, he can tackle, he's got a great engine, and as you say, yeah, judge him over 2 or 3 seasons, but he'll still be here.
What about Benjani, Paul?
Well, I think it's good for City that he's fit again, playing again. I thought he did quite well on Saturday. He could have scored himself. Just probably a minute before Stephen Ireland scored and took his goal very well, by the way. Benjani flashed a header just wide. I think, of what I've seen of City this season, he's probably looked the best of the guys who've played as a target man, if you like, so far. So obviously having him fit again is a major bonus, and if he plays regularly, he'll get his share of goals. And just on the subject of goals, when we've been discussing Stephen Ireland, don't forget he's got 7 as well from midfield, and we're not even into December yet. That's excellent going.
It is excellent going. Now, this is the City Debate Show, and Manchester City is the richest club in the world, which means that 90% of the transfer speculation revolves around City and 100% of the transfer kite flying. We've had both this weekend in spades, and Peter Barnes and Paul Hetherington are going to be picking the bones out of that in part 2. We'll see you in 2. City Debate Show, and with me on the table today, Peter Barnes, formerly of Manchester City and England, played for a few other clubs as well, but Paul Hetherington, top journo. Do you know he used to be the chair of the Football Writers Association?
Until this year, in fact. And until May, I had 3 years in charge, which was great fun. Good experience, some good functions, some good trips.
So certainly some good functions.
I like a good function.
Right, we're going to talk about transfer speculation in a moment, but let's just throw this forward, Peter. We've talked about Arsenal, but we've had our moment. As Fergie always says, the moment is a moment and it's gone. So Arsenal's gone. Schalke Thursday. Little birdie tells me you're off there, are you?
Yes, I've been invited very kindly by the club, Gary Cook and myself, Colin Bell, Tony Buck, Maxim will be Gary Owen and Big Boothie. I'm sure Boothie will try and drink Cologne dry while he's out there. But it'll be nice to go out with the club and for a European event after all these years.
I say no, Paul, if that lot were all 25 again, you'd have the makings half-decent team there.
I think they do all right, yeah.
Hey, but on Sunday, of course, it's that fixture, Manchester United. If City get where they're hoping to get to, Paul, our perception of this particular fixture is going to change, because so far it's been the panacea. We've been rubbish, they've been great, but as long as we beat them, doesn't matter. We may have to change that view, so how important is Sunday?
Well, it's hugely important to both clubs, not just because of the local pride involved in the prestige and everything else. It's obviously, a majorly important game for City to measure themselves against one of the big four. And obviously, City need a few more points, don't they? Let's not kid ourselves. I think most people look at the league table and are a bit disappointed where City are, despite what happened last Saturday against Arsenal. And obviously, United, they're playing catch-up at the moment with Chelsea and Liverpool. So, a point wouldn't be a great result for United. They need to win as well. So, it's, as they say, it's got all the ingredients, hasn't it?
Are you looking forward to it, Peter?
I am, Jim, and I think the last couple of years City have been the best team in the derbies. They've
done well in
a lot of points
yeah.
off United, so United will be smart in, obviously, to get the revenge back, but I always think form in derbies does go out the window, because if you're not up for it for that game, for the fans who are screaming for you to win, every game goes out the window in the league. It's to beat United in the derby, as City have done the last few seasons, so, it won't be easy this Sunday. Never is, and United are riding high and playing well, but, it'd be nice to get off the back of the Arsenal result at weekend, to get a good result in Germany would give them added confidence to go into Sunday's game. I
also think, though, Paul, this, coming back to your point about a yardstick, really, because the only team I've really seen blow City away this season was Chelsea. They were head and shoulders better than us. Although we played some decent football. We should have beaten Liverpool, we've beaten Arsenal. There have been some ropey performances, but measured against the best so far, I think City have done OK. So United will be a good yardstick, don't you think?
Very much so, yeah. I think any team in the Premier League who want to sort of measure themselves in terms of their progress and clubs with ambitions of being top four, the club to look at, to measure yourself against, is Manchester United. After all, they are the champions, and they have been the team of the Premier League era. So, it's a great yardstick, as you say, Jim, and I'm certain City will be right up for it and really looking forward to measure themselves against that yardstick.
You've got a tough life. You've got to go to Schalke with Booth. You drink all that beer, watch that football, and come back for the derby.
Yeah, I mean, they won at weekend, didn't they, Schalke? I think 3-1 in the Bundesliga. So I think they're 6th in the league over there in Germany. But
fantastic support they get as well.
Unbelievable. Absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, I think it's Ian Cheeseman's second club, isn't it?
Yeah, it is.
GMR Radio.
Oh, yes.
It's a good test for us on Thursday, and let's hope they're up for it.
Right, let's have the fun bit of being a City supporter. Because we are the richest club in the world, allegedly. So, apparently, Peter, now, if we want to buy a player, me and Paul were talking about this before, there's a standard City fee now. It seems to start at 60 million, doesn't it? So, one of the papers on Sunday suggested John Terry for 60 million.
I bought the same newspaper on Sunday.
And what did you think when you read it?
Oh, I just can't believe it. One, he'd be a fantastic buy. I think John Terry's a great player and a great captain for England. It's just the transfer fees that I get frightened with, 60 million for a centre-half. You don't know if it's just paper talk or whether...
Oh, we could do better than that, Barnsley. Last week it was 60 million for a goalie, Paul.
Absolutely right. Buffon. Yeah. He's not bad, mind, is he?
Well, Mark Bowen was interviewed this weekend and he wasn't coy about it. He just said he's the best goalkeeper, generally recognised, best goalkeeper in the world, very important position. He didn't elaborate about whether he'd be prepared to shell out 60 million for him. But... £60 million for a defender, £60 million for a goalkeeper. It does.
It makes Robinho look cheap,
doesn't it? Does.
Yeah,
but once you stop laughing, it makes you wonder where it takes the game.
Yeah. I think it frightens you, really, because you wonder, we are the richest club allegedly now in the world, how patient the owners are prepared to wait and how patient Mark Hughes is prepared to wait. Because when you've got all this backup of the richest club in the country, who's to say that they really mean it and they're going to spend 300, 400, 500 million the next few years, like Chelsea did under Mourinho? And depends how patient they're going to be. But where I worry about, Jim, is the local kids coming through. They've got to leave the kids alone and constant. I think they've agreed to back the academy 100% and bring the kids through, as we've done over the years, which is very important, parcel point for Manchester City, because the fans love seeing kids come through and make it to the first team. And as long as we don't jeopardise that and become like a Chelsea and Arsenal, where we just go and buy 11 of the best foreigners in the world, you're knocking the academy and stopping good kids coming through who need time.
Yeah, well, I agree with everything that Peter's just said, Paul, but theoretically, Mark Hughes can put a list there that says best goalkeeper in the world, best right back, left back, 60 million, 60 million, 60 million, 60 million. But once you actually think about that and take it to its logical conclusion, there are only 4 or 5 multiple billionaires, probably oil-based, maybe Bill Gates at Microsoft, who can play this game. So you don't end up with an English football club, you end up with 4 world clubs, the football equivalent to Harlem Globetrotters, don't you?
It's like a fantasy team,
correct.
isn't it? It'd end up like a World 11, rather than a Manchester City 11, if you like. And I agree with Peter, I think it's very important that City don't sort of lose touch with the academy situation, which has been hugely successful. And I think at the moment City have got a lovely blend, actually. You've got the lads who've come through the academy with the big name players, the world-class players, with hopefully more to come, because let's face it, we all want to see City sign some more really top players. We want City to be as strong as possible. We want City to challenge United, Liverpool, Chelsea, Arsenal, who they've just beaten, because that's in the best interest of English football. It might not be, in terms of the competitive element in this country, it might not be in the best interest if we're losing English players from English teams, but it's in the best interest of the Premier League anyway to make the competition more competitive.
The thing is, though, Peter, if just look at you and your dad, between you, you've got what? Thick end of 80, 90 years of service to Manchester City. So if anybody understands the soul of the club, it's used to. And you'd hate to see that disappear, don't you? Yes, you want to be up there with the best teams in the world, but there is that little bit of the soul of City that you know and your dad know as well as anybody. You'd hate to see that be the price to be paid.
Yeah, I think that's the one big thing about Man City, is that the relationship they've always had with the fans over the years. Are very close to the fans, and to bring the kids up, in my day, in the 70s, when we brought kids through like Jed Keegan and Paul Power and Kenny Clements, you look at any team in the North East where you're from, any team had 6 or 7 local lads in the side coming through. United was the same. You had good Scottish, Irish, Welsh players in your side, along with the English lads. And you can't lose that part of the soul of the club, and I think that's very important. And hopefully they'll give Mark Hughes a lot of time. He does need time to build the side he wants, and they'll cling on to the good kids coming through. Because these kids learn off Robinho and Petrov and Alano. It makes them better players, playing with world-class players who've come from all over the world.
Right, let's talk about a transfer speculation that we give some credence to. Shall we say John Terry will blow that out of the water?
Well, I'm absolutely certain Mark Hughes would love to have John Terry, and maybe there's been some noises made, but I can't see it happening.
No.
And the bottom line there is, I don't think John Terry wants to leave Chelsea.
I would agree with that.
Correct.
Buffon may or may not happen. It may not be 60 million quid.
Yeah, once again, I'm certain Mark Hughes would love to have Buffon here, but, I mean, Juventus are saying it won't happen. So maybe that might have to wait till he's out of contract. How old will he be then? Yeah. But I suppose keepers can be a bit older, can't they?
There's one in the Evening News tonight, though, I would give it a little bit of credence to, mainly because Chris Bailey wrote the story and he's very meticulous in his research with it when it comes to City. But Kolo Touré has been linked with a possible move to City. Nobody mentioned 60 million, but
he'd be a good
he is a good player, isn't he?
He's a good player.
Yeah.
And Arsenal missed him on the weekend, but he's a good player.
So we're giving that one maybe legs?
I would, give that legs by all means, but once again, I can't see Arsene Wenger, particularly in the current climate, being too keen to lose Kolo Touré. He could even be a candidate to be the next captain now.
So, you've said Benjani's probably looking the best of the top men that we've got
so
available. He's going to address that, though.
Yeah.
One story which comes back time and time again, Rocky Santa Cruz. He wants to come, Mark Hughes wants him. He's prepared to pay 4 times what you paid for him at Blackburn. So, are we looking at that as a highly likely deal for January?
I was told last week by someone at Blackburn Rovers who would know that there's no chance of that deal happening in January. Because Blackburn want to make sure they stay in the Premier League, and it's not their intention to sell their main goal scorer, arguably their best player, in January, and then find out in May they're in a different division. Yeah, could be a different situation in the summer. I suspect, unless City make an unbelievable offer in January, if that deal's going to happen, it'll happen in the summer.
You were nodding very sagely there, Peter. Last word goes to you.
It's common sense. I mean, Paul Ince wouldn't want to lose his top striker in January, knowing that it's all right having a big transfer fee, selling him for 20, 30, 40 million, but you need to go and buy someone and replace him. And like you say, Blackburn in the bottom 3 by then, which they could be, they don't want to lose the prolific goal scorer who's going to keep them up.
Right, just before we finish, quick prediction for the derby. Paul Hetherington.
Going to sit on the fence, 2-2.
Peter?
2-1.
Which way?
City.
Many thanks to Peter Barnes, and as always, delightful to have back round the table Paul Hetherington. We'll see you next time on the City Debate Show.